Today is December 14th. I'm here with Daniel. Daniel is a police officer within the greater Los Angeles area. How are you doing, Daniel?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing great as well. So, policing in 2020, how
Correct.
how has that experience been for you?
It's been challenging. It's been challenging, yeah, to say the least.
What's challenging about it?
Um, I mean, I say the cooperation of the public. They don't really like to cooperate as much now, but it goes both ways. I've had in my 3 years of being police officer, 2020, I've had more people come up to me and tell me, I appreciate your service and I appreciate what you do more than any other years. So it does go both ways. You got the outspoken ones that are kind of like anti PD, right? But there's always that silent majority that supports you, but they just don't come out and say it because they're afraid of whatever reason. They have their own reasons. So it goes both ways, but when I say challenging, I mean when we do investigations and stuff, not a lot of people want to cooperate and talk to us, but that's where I work. Where I work, it's kind of lower income. It's not, somewhere around like in the Orange County area, the South Orange County area. It's more of like the lower income poverty kind of places. So there's been a distrust there with the police for a while. So I don't think, it's been that much of an impact when it comes to the cooperation, because before we weren't getting some, but I feel like it's even worse now than it was before. So it goes little by little. Like we were getting little cooperation prior, and then now 2020 we're just giving even less. And it's just the distrust, right? The public doesn't trust the police, and it's unfortunate that it's like that, but we can only do what we can to, hopefully fix it and, build that bridge between us and them.
Yes, that's a huge bridge to build, and it's going to take a lot of effort. So you said there's been less trust this year than in your previous 2 years, or you said, you know,
Yeah, I would say there's been, when I say less, I mean like less cooperation. You know what I mean? Like, let's say 2019, right? We had a shooting, we had a stabbing, we had a murder. You go door to door and, hey man, what'd you hear? What'd you see? If anything, right? A lot of people would be like, hey, I heard, 5 gunshots. I heard 2 gunshots. I heard this, that, and the other thing. But it seems like in 2020, you get that same situation, that same area. You knock on their door, like, hey man, what'd you hear? They're like, oh, I didn't hear anything. And they close the door. It's like,
wow,
okay, is it they don't want to talk to us because I'm wearing a uniform, or are they afraid of like retaliation, or what like what's the deal there? But it feels like it's because of just everything that's gone on with policing in 2020, with the social injustice and the defunding and all that stuff.
how has the defunding movement impacted your office?
Um, we cut over 50 officers
Wow.
from it. Luckily, no one lost their job because of we've had a high amount of retirements. So the retirements we had was greater than that number of what we had to cut. So no one lost their job, but those spots are unfilled. Those They will not be filled. So whatever that spot was, whether if it was a patrol, whether it was a detective, whether it was a sergeant or a captain or lieutenant spot, now there's one less of what it was. So that those spots aren't being filled. And if it's like patrol, because right now I'm in the patrol division, there's less of us, and the call volume is the same. So the same amount of people are calling 911 on a daily basis, but there's less of us to respond. So the calls are kind of backing up. Police response is a little slower, and that's not due to us not wanting to respond. It's just that we're handicapped with the resources we have, and also with this stay-at-home order, everybody's home now, so the calls I think have gone up a little bit due to that. Because when you're at work, you're not really calling police, right? How many people call police when they're at work? Not a
No,
lot, because they're
no.
working, doing other things. But when you're at home and you see something, or you're a victim of something, or if you're in a gang and you're gonna go shoot up a rival gang member, well, you know where they're gonna be. They're gonna be at home because they're not gonna go anywhere else. So we've seen a rise in violent crimes. We've seen a rise in property crimes, more stolen vehicles, because everyone's staying home, so no one's going anywhere. So their cars are just sitting out for a long period of time. So
Wow.
people are breaking in there and taking those. So some of the calls I would say are going up, but there's just less of us to respond to them. So it's weird. It's like 2018 to 2019, you could be like, okay, well, in this month it's been busier than this month because of this. Like the summer times are always busy because kids are home and they're out doing whatever. But now it's like, wow, 2020, it's unpredictable. It could be super slow one night, and then the next day, boom, it blows up. We have 5 shootings in one day.
Wow.
There is no predicting it like you used to in the previous years. And I think that's due to the stay-at-home order. And I don't really say that's to the defunding aspect of it. I don't think crime rate has gone up because we're defunded. I just think it's gone up because less people are staying in jail too. I know LA County, they just elected a new district attorney, and he came out and he's like, I'm ending the cash bail system. So if you go to jail and
Okay.
your bail's like, let's say you get arrested for domestic violence, right? Well, your bail would probably be about $50,000. Well, he wants to end the cash bail system, and it's supposed to go on like how dangerous you are to society versus your risk of flight and all these other factors. And a lot of people are getting out on 1-cent bails. Majority of people are getting on 1-cent bails. So they're going to jail, they're getting arrested, they're getting out within 24, 30 hours.
Is this currently or after the new DA's implementation?
It was currently, and then there was a proposition in California to remain the cash bail system, and it got passed, voted. The people in California are like, we want to keep the cash bail system. Well, the new DA says, no, I'm ending it. So even though it was a prop that passed, he's still ending it. I don't know how he can do that because it was like a prop that was passed, but I don't know. He already said he's going to do it. We'll see. But so they want to keep it the way it was, which is the 1-cent bail. We've had people do shootings, get out the same week and do another shooting. We arrested the same guys twice in a week for 2 different shootings because they're getting out as quick. So the crime rate has gone up due to that 100%. And nobody's staying in jail, and they know it too. I was working the other day, and we stopped this guy, and he was like, "Oh, I recognize you guys." I'm like, "Oh, I don't recognize you." And then some of my coworkers showed up to assist us with the stop we were doing. And one of my coworkers was like, "Oh yeah, I know that guy. We just arrested him for a stolen vehicle." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "Man, you got caught in a G ride?" He's like, "Yeah, I did." I was like, "How long did you do?" He's like, 32 hours. You did 32 hours? I'm like, "Did you go to court?" He's like, "Well, they gave me a court date. I went to court, but there was like nobody there. I don't know if it was open or not, so I just left." So we're like, "Oh man, this guy didn't show up to court. It's probably like a warrant out for his arrest." Check the system, no warrant. So the dude this dude steals a car, goes to jail, gets out in a day and a half, and there's no case for it. It's just the charges were dropped, his case was dismissed, whatever it was. So I'm like, what does that tell him? It tells him, well, I can steal cars, right? And from the surface, it looks like, oh, that's not a big deal, right? It's just a property crime. It's a stolen car. Well, think of the victim, right? Think of you waking up in the morning to go to work and now your car's gone. Well, how are you going to get to work? Maybe you have to take a sick day. What if you don't get paid on sick days, right? Especially in the COVID, people are struggling out there. So now they don't have a car to go to work, they don't have transportation. So what if they have to buy a new car? What if that car was paid off, right? And they didn't have payments on it for that reason. So there's so many different factors, like the big picture, it really is hurting the victim, and our criminal justice system is not doing anything. They're letting these people out. And it just tells it, well, we can steal cars. It's like, what? There has to be some penalty. I'm not saying everyone stay in jail for 20 years for stealing a car. There's got to be something. You can't just get out the next day to go do it again. There's got to be something.
What do you think that something could be, or how do you think that that process could be improved?
Um, well, you would have to look at what you did previously. You would have to look at what the charge was for stealing a vehicle. 10851 is the vehicle code or the penal code for that. So you charge someone with 10851. What was that penalty before? Was it 10 years? Was it 5 years? Was it probation? And then how did that work out, right? And then you look at that, and then you would have to determine how you're going to fix it. If that worked previously, like, hey, you went to jail for 2 years every time you stole a car and it was working, and then what I mean by working, I mean you look at the statistics and you see vehicle thefts go down, then I would say stick to that plan. But if it wasn't working, or if it was, you go to jail for 2 years and the vehicle thefts would remain the same or go up, well, then you would have to look at how to change that. And from a patrol's perspective, as a police officer, we don't really deal with that. I can't really say how to change that, because that's the court system. I'm at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to the court system. There's people smarter than me that deal with research and legislation and penalties and sentencing. They would have to make those decisions. Probation, people get put on probation for anything now. And when we try to violate the probation because, they got a gun on them and that's a violation of probation, a lot of probation officers, when we call, they're like, oh, no, we're not violating them. Because possession of a firearm in California is a misdemeanor. It's a misdemeanor charge. If you have it concealed in your pants, if you have it in your car, it's a misdemeanor charge unless you can put an enhancement on it, which is, if you were convicted within the last 10 years of carrying a gun, then it would be a felony. If you are a gang member, you put a gang enhancement, it's a felony. If you're already a convicted felon, you have a gun, that's a felony. But a lot of those enhancements are going away. What I mean by that the new DA that came into LA County, he's getting rid of gang enhancements. So any crime that was committed by a gangster and you get an extra 5 years or 12 years or whatever it was, it's going down. They're like, we're getting rid of gang enhancements. So if you have a gun on you and you're a gang member and you're not a convicted felon, or you haven't been convicted of having a gun on you within the previous 10 years, then that's just a misdemeanor charge at the end of the day. A misdemeanor charge, that's the same as driving without a license. Misdemeanor. How is carrying a gun and driving without a license carry the same weight? You know what I mean? So there's something there that's not really working. And, we'll see how it is with this new district attorney when he wants to, in the cash bail system, get rid of certain enhancement. He doesn't want to prosecute for certain crimes as well, like trespassing, resisting arrest. So we'll see how that goes. But from what it looks like, how it's been going, it's not going to go well. Looks like the crime rate in LA County is going to go up a little bit.
Has it been going up recently?
Yes, this entire year it has. And we get emails sent to us, and every year, like, we have a crime analysis that works with us, and they put out our crime stats in different areas to show, like, hey, in this area, there's more vehicle thefts. In this area, there's more of this, right? And they can show you what it was in 2019 versus 2020, and it's gone up a ton. In the division I work, in the area I work itself, we've had a 40% increase in vehicle thefts.
Wow.
We've had a 45% increase in shootings. Yeah, it's gone up, and that's just in my one area, not including the entire scope of it.
That's a lot to handle, and you have less people on patrol now too.
Correct. So crime rates going up and police officers are going down.
Wow.
There was a news bit in LA. I saw the LAPD, they're looking for their budget, and what they proposed was they were trying to cut X amount of city workers, and that was going to relate to 951 police officers getting cut.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. I mean, we don't know the consequences of that.
No. And the people cutting it will just say, well, as police officers are going to have to work harder. Well, I mean, there's only so much you can do. If I'm on a call and I'm dealing with you as a victim and something else goes out, I can't just leave you and go handle that call. I have to finish what I'm doing. So now we're like in the scope of, well, who's going to handle that? And we got this officer breaking off to go there. Well, what if it's like a robbery in progress or a domestic violence or something where it requires two officers due to the officer safety issues, and you're only having one go. Well, now that one could go, but it's like, well, do I handle this on my own? Do I wait for another unit? I was on a deal a couple weeks ago where someone broke into the house, and it was just one officer there, and he was like, "Can I get more officers?" And we are like, "All right." So I was over there. It was just me and him, and we're talking to the homeowner, and she's like, "It's my whoever it was, like the ex-boyfriend of the sister or daughter or someone living in that home. I forget the exact relation." And I look in the back and I see him. I'm like, "Oh man, he's back there." So we're in the front, and she's like, "Well, there's no one in the alley. What if he hops the alley?" Sorry, we don't have enough officers right now. It's just us two. He hops the alley, then he gets away. I mean, I don't know. What do you want us to do? We can't put one in the front, one in the back. That's unsafe. So we're gonna have to sit here in the front, wait for more officers, and hopefully they get here in time before he hops the alley. So the result of that was he did end up hopping the alley, but it was as another officers were getting there, so he hopped the alley into them. We caught him, but I mean, he hops that alley, 2 minutes earlier, he's gone, and that's just because we didn't have officers.
That's a huge, and he gets away there and then hides out and comes back. And who who do you think is affected the most with low police officer density in urban areas?
It's the people, the everyday citizens, the law-abiding citizens. They're hurt the most. The ones that work and do the 9 to 5s, and the ones that live in that area, they're hurt the most.
Yeah, I think so too, and we'll see where it goes. I know a lot of people, especially younger people, aren't a huge fan of police officers. How, you've been on the force for 3 years, but do your, more senior officers ever tell you how it's changed over the decades?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The guys with 10, 15, 20, 25 years on. When I was working this area last year, this guy had 30 years on. He was been a cop longer than I've been alive. And you talk to him about how it was when he first came on in the early 90s to how it's progressed and where it's going. And they'll just sit there and tell you, like, it's a pendulum. It swings one way and then it swings the other way. Right now, the pendulum is swinging against police right now. The law is changing, and this defunding and all this stuff, it's swinging that way. Well, the pendulum will swing back eventually, but it's when. When is that pendulum going to swing back? Personally, my personal opinion, I think it's going to get worse before it swings back our way. I think it's bad right now, but it's not bad to where it's going to make changes, right? Because in order for change to happen, it has to get like super bad. Like there has to be an incident, right? For example, which sparked this incident, it was the George Floyd. Everybody knows about the George Floyd incident, and that sparked the movement. And since then, we've had different things: Breonna Taylor, Jacob Blake. We've had all these other names pop up of what they would say police brutality or social injustice. And so that kind of sparked the pendulum to swing the defunding way. Well, how's it going to swing back? You need an incident where it's just gotten so bad to where people are just running amok like the wild, wild west. And I think it's going to be a few years until that happens.
Wow, you think that the changes going on now will, take place in communities and society, and then boom, something's going to happen?
I do. I think the changes now are not going to benefit people. I really don't. I think it's going to benefit criminals more than it benefits the people, the law abiding citizens. I really do. And in order to come back, the people are going to have to say, enough is enough. My block has been shot up too many times. My house has been broken into too many times. My car has been broken into too many times. Why is nothing happening? And they're going to say the police officers aren't doing their job, because that's what everyone results back. My car was broken into because you weren't here to protect it. Well, that's not necessarily true. That's just the blanket statement. The police officers are not protecting me. I don't feel safe. Okay. You know what? It's not us. We're coming out here. We're arresting these guys. We're taking police reports. We're doing what we can. It's the next level. It's that court system, right? And if the DAs are not filing on these cases, we have to get to the root of why are they not filing on these cases? Well, we have to go to the DA and what the DA is telling them. So the DA is instructing a lot of prosecutors not to file on certain cases unless they're repeat offenders. So, okay, how is somebody a repeat offender? Well, we have to catch him or he has to be a named suspect, right? If Joe Blow is out there breaking into cars, how do I know it's Joe Blow? Somebody would have to see him and be like, hey, that's Joe Blow. I know him. Or we would have to catch him in the act. Well, with less police officers, it's hard to catch people in the act because we could be somewhere not near where this crime is happening because we're all over the place trying to help out other officers and clean out these calls and try to do the best we can. So when these crimes are in progress, it might take us a little longer to get there because we don't have an officer ready or in the area. So it's like, oh, if they're repeat offenders, they'll get a stronger sentence. Well, we're going to have to identify them first, you know? And it's not like where you see on TV where, you know, they get a camera and they're like, oh, run facial recognition through the database. And then they like type in something and within like the same scene that you're watching, they're like, oh, it's this guy. And it prints out his like address, his birthday, his rap sheet and all that stuff. Dude, that's make believe, man. That's not real. It doesn't work that way. You actually have to like look at this guy, print out 5 other guys that look like him, call a 6-pack, take that 6-pack to the victim, have them point it out. Okay, it's this guy. All right, now we know it's this guy. Then we do a workup on them and find out who it is. But that takes time. That's not, you know, a 1-hour investigation in a murder like you see on TV. That's not real. So yeah, repeat offenders are going to get stronger sentences, but how are they going to become repeat offenders? Someone's going to have to identify them. Either they get caught by an officer or a victim says, yeah, I saw that. But if you're a victim, a lot of times they don't look outside. They like kind of look and they see their car getting breaking into and they call the police and they duck and like, hey, someone's breaking into my car because they don't want to like, you know, get in a confrontation, right? So when you get a description like, hey, what this guy look like? Well, I didn't see his face. Okay, it's not their fault they didn't see his face. They were scared. This guy was, you know, doing a crime right in front of them. Well, if we don't know who it is, they can't be repeat offenders because we can't go after them. So when they say, oh, yeah, we'll prosecute on his 3rd time, well, that's just his 3rd time being caught. How many times previously did he do it? Did he do it 10, 12, 13 times before we were able to identify him? So I really do think it's going to get really bad before it gets better.
That's a interesting perspective. And as a cop, I'm sure, you know, you guys talk about it all the time, you and your fellow
Co-workers.
And it's not something that I think we think of, you know, just like that accumulation of lack of security builds up. And then before you know it, you're like living in a really chaotic state.
Correct.
So you are on the patrol team now?
Correct.
Have you been on patrol the entire time you've been on the force?
I have. I've done detective work for a short while. I wasn't personally. I didn't like it. I like being on the front lines, lack of a better term. So I just like driving around. Right, I like going to these calls. Detective work is more of like follow-ups. They get the patrol officer's report, read it, recontact the victim, try to look for video surveillance, try to identify the guy as the best they can. But they have caseloads, not just one. They got like 30, 40 they're working at a time. So it's a lot difficult. It's a lot of work. So I kind of like, you know, patrol is case by case basis. And what I mean by that is once you go to a call and you take a report and you file it, you're done. That your case is done. It goes to the detective. Now it's the detective's job to do his end of the work. And the next time we hear about that case is if we get a subpoena for court.
Got it. So you don't have to manage so many different cases at once. You can just one at a time.
Correct. As soon as you don't that call, you're good. Now, if you want, you can do your own follow up. If you're taking if you work the same area a lot, you kind of see some of the same people. So if you're taking a report and you're like, hey, this fits the same MO as what I took last week or last month. I think it's the same guy. You can, do your own follow up, try to get some cameras, but it's hard to do that when you're a patrol because you're going to call to call to call. So if you do have that downtime where it's like, hey, you know what, I'm gonna do some follow up. A lot of times for me, when there's like nobody calling 911 for the 20 minutes I have, I just kind of like just take that time to just decompress, just drive around, hang out, whatever, because I know at any given time anything can happen, and a drop of a hat, it just pops off. It'll be the slowest night ever, and then boom, something happens, and it's just I'm mentally prepared for that. So when I don't really do follow ups on my own because during those slow times I take it as okay, this is my time. We don't get 10-minute breaks. We don't get 30-minute lunches. We work and we eat on duty. So when it's slow like that, that's our 10-minute break or our 30-minute lunch, right? So
What is your day to day? Like, what do you do in a given day? Say in a slow day or in a really fast paced day?
um we go to work, get changed out, start your shift, and log on, look at the board, see what kind of calls are holding from the previous shift, if any. If there's calls holding, then go handle it, clear the board. Um, and then just if everybody's on something, stay available in case a priority one goes out. You don't want everybody tied up at one time. Sometimes that happens, but you try not to have everyone tied up at once. And a slow day would just be going around, you know, kicking out transients from certain businesses with the homeless population, because I do work in a city. So cities do have a greater homeless population than it would have like a more like suburbs area, right? So a lot of these business owners are like, hey, this guy's camping out a tent, so hey man, you got to leave, whatever. So that's kind of like a slow day. We deal with the transients going from place to place, trying to you know get them away from the open businesses that are you know they're like interfering, right? Try to get them resources if we can. Some of them don't accept it. To be honest with you, you would think that you give somebody resources like, hey man, you want to go to this cold weather shelter, you want to go to the multi-service center. They got food, they got clothes, they got showers. A lot of people don't accept them. They're like, no, I don't want that. I'll go on about my business. Okay, that's their choice. They're an adult, make their own choices. So that's kind of like a slow day, right? Taking reports, hey, this happened last night, whatever. And a fast day is, you got the shooting here, you got a shooting. I've worked where we've had 4 shootings in one day.
Wow.
You're at one shooting, you're dealing with that, another one goes out, then you try to break as many officers as you don't need on this one to go with that one. Then there's another one. You got a call from other areas to come and help you out. And I've been working where we've had 3 murders in 3 days, back to back, back to back. So I mean, it's been there was it 2 weeks ago we were working and one of our divisions had 5 shootings in one day, and we had one. So I mean, and then the other night there was two and within 30 minutes. I mean, it just sometimes it pops off and sometimes it doesn't.
Wow. That's how do you and your coworkers prepare for that level of intensity?
um you know what, it's hard to say. It's hard to answer that because everyone has their own different preparation. For me, my mindset is just, it's one call at a time. No matter how busy, no matter how slow it is, you can only do what you can do. You can only go as fast as the call takes it. Sometimes the calls that you go to, the reports are really quick, or the victim is like, no, I don't want to do all this, blah, 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 and they leave. Like, okay, a lot of times you show up to a victim and you're talking to them, and they don't want anything done. They're just like, no, I don't want to do any of that, you know? And a lot of times they're not the ones who call. It's somebody else who sees it, calls, this is what's going on over here, right? So for my preparation, it's just take it one call at a time. You know, if I go to this shooting, I handle this shooting. I do it the way I always do it, step 1 to step 10. And if I stop at step 4, because that's where my investigation ends, and I stop at step 4. If it goes all the way to step 10, then it goes all the way to step 10. You can only go as fast as you're allowed. And then once I'm done with that, I wrap it up, go to the next call, one call at a time.
Got it. That, I mean, and that's why you're on patrol too, because detective work, you can't really be one call at a time. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, detectives they have priorities. They take their cases and they label them. You know, this takes precedent. This guy's arrested. This guy's in custody. So we have 48 hours to charge him. So we're going to work on this one. Or this one happened 2 weeks ago, and um, the victim reported it 2 weeks after that. So this is a month-old case. So we can work on this, but we got to charge this guy within 2 days. We're going to do this one first. So that's how the detectives work it.
Got it. And so, how did you know that you wanted to be a police officer when you were younger and before you joined the
Um,
force?
yeah, I get this question a lot. um, I've always had an interest in policing, like just like watching the TV shows, right? Like watching Cops and Life PD, right? I thought it was cool, right? These guys are always in vehicle chases and foot chases, they're always doing something, and it's not like a normal job where you go to an office and you're doing this, not a regular 9 to 5. So I was like, you know what? This is interests me. So then I went to college for it, got an AA degree in criminal justice, went on a few ride-alongs with Orange County sheriffs, got my bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and did some more ride-alongs, and was like, you know what? I think I can do this. I think I'm able to do this. And then I joined the academy, and I got in at 23, and did the 6-month academy, and then 3 years on patrol, and loving it.
How was the 6-month academy? What did you do during those 6 months?
It was academy was tough. It was tough. You learn, it's a lot of physical aspects, right? When you think of the academy, a lot of people revert to like, oh, it's kind of like the Marines, right? Where they do this, this, and this. In a way, right? But the difference is the Marines or just not even the Army, just military in general, it's more combat trained. So police academy, we're not like doing as hardship as the military is, because we're not combat trained. It's more you do your physical because they want to see you perform under stress, because it's a very stressful job. But you also have to learn in the classroom. You have to learn what a crime is. How do you have a crime? Like everybody says, like, oh, that's a domestic violence. Well, what's a domestic violence? What does the California Penal Code say what constitutes a domestic violence? Is it ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend? Is it, oh, well, he's not my boyfriend, he's not my girlfriend, just a Tinder hookup, and then you hit her? Is that domestic violence? Like so the classroom aspect of it was, I wouldn't say challenging, because I went to school, but challenging enough when you're out there running, doing push-ups, getting yelled at, doing all this stuff, and then you got to go in and learn. You're like, oh, you're tired, you're sweating, you're, whatever, and then they gave you homework, and you got to go home and do all this homework. You're getting, not as many hours of sleep, then you got to go back and do it. So it is tough. It's not easy. And then you learn how to shoot. We did 80 hours in the Academy of Shooting. So it is tough. It's a lot of work. It's worth it though. It's only 6 months. If you think of, if you just think of it as like it's half a year, right? That's all it is. It's not even a. It's not even a. It's like what, a semester of class or schooling. So you just gotta. If you're trying to become a police officer, you want to become a police officer, and you're in the academy, and you're after the first week or the first 2 weeks, you're like, damn, this is brutal. It's only 6 months. It's only half a year. Just stick with it. Stick through it, ask for help if you need to, and just go. Take it one day at a time. Day one, they want you to do this. Do what they say, regardless if you agree or disagree with the punishment you're given. Just do it. Do it the best you can, and then move on. Take it one day at a time. And then once you're that, and then you're set. You're set. It's a good paying job. You're not gonna be rich if you're looking to be a police officer. You want to, have this and have that, like the movie Bad Boys and Miami. He's driving a Ferrari with the house on the beach. No, that's movies, man. You ain't making that much money, but you'll make more than others. You make more than other professions, and there's always overtime built in. You get a pension, and in the end, it's those 6 months. It's worth the 30-year career.
Wow, those 6 months sound really rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you said if someone needs it and they're struggling, they can ask for help.
You ask for help, you can. Yeah, you ask for your classmates to help you. You
Got
don't
it.
necessarily ask the tax staff to help you. Ask your classmate if you're struggling in an area. Like, let's say you're struggling in shooting. Ask somebody, you know, ask them to help you with your shooting. Go on your own time. Go with somebody that will take you out to a range, teach you the fundamentals of shooting if you're just not understanding, if you're not getting it. A lot of times it has to do with flinching. People pull the trigger and they're anticipating that loud bang, so they kind of flinch at the last second, and that throws your shot off. Well, how do you fix that? It's going to take just hours of shooting, getting used to that bang, and you're just going to have to, you know, just going to have to deal with it. Yeah, it makes a loud noise. It is what it is. So, or if you're struggling in the academics, some people didn't go to college. They just went to like the military. We had guys just go from the military, get out and join the police academy. So that classroom work they might have struggled in because they didn't have, the finals that you had to prepare for and study for. Because we get tests in the academy. We get 150, 100 question tests that you have to pass a certain percentage, and and they tell you, okay, it's going to be on these 7 areas, and those 7 areas combined can be like 1,000 pages, and you're like, oh wow, how am I supposed to put 1,000 pages and there's a 100 question test? Well, if you went to college, you kind of know how to study, right? You kind of flashcards or however you do it, highlight certain stuff, bullet points, whatever. But some of the guys that didn't go to school and they straight to military there and they're struggling with academics, reach out and ask your classmate, hey man, how do you prepare? And ask for help, because you don't want to see one of your classmates fail, and unfortunately we always have people that drop out. There's never any 100% of people that pass. Like when I went to the academy, it was like 60 of us, and we had 48 graduate, I want to say 40, I think it was like 48. And then we went to training on patrol, and there's only 39 of us left.
Wow.
So it really does dwindle down.
It's really tough. And I'm sure, I mean, the job is really tough. So they have to dwindle it down.
Yeah. I mean, it's either you can or you can't, what it comes down to. It's either can you do the job or you cannot do the job. Because at the end of the day, there might be a situation where you're going to be by yourself and you're going to have to deal with it. And that's basically what the training is. Can you do it on your own? Can you do this job on your own? And if you can't do it on your own, that's fine. It's just some people can't do it. If everybody could do it, we wouldn't have this less of cops. We would have a high amount of police officers out in the workforce. We don't, because not everybody could do it.
Definitely not. Most people cannot do it, I would say. Um, what, how many of your academy classmates do kept within the same area as you, or kept on patrol or joined the same force as you?
Well, we only had everybody. I think there was only one guy moved out of state after the department I was with. He moved out of state, but everybody else stayed with.
And how many of them had bachelor's degrees versus just a AA degree or no degree?
Um, I would say the ones I didn't have that had no degree had military experience. So I would say like I don't know, there's probably like 3 or 4 of those guys, but then everybody else had an AA or bachelor's. I don't know how many people had an AA versus a bachelor's because that's not really what like talk about, right? Like hey man, like do you have an AA or I just know from the ones that are going back to school for bachelors, that's kind of like okay, like that guy didn't have one or that guy had an AA or whatever. We had one person had a master's. So,
Wow.
and we have a few others right now working on their masters. So it comes, but everybody has something. There's nobody in there with no degree, no military experience. Like you don't just graduate from high school, do nothing, and apply. We don't have any of those. Somebody either has an AA, bachelor's, or military, or all three.
They have some sort of credential going into the force, going into the
Yes.
academy.
Yes.
Wow. And so, how often are you alone on the job?
Well, I work a one-man car. So when I go to work, I work. Sometimes I work with my classmate. We work together sometimes, but majority of the time I'm by myself. But that's not to say I'm by myself at a call. I do when I go to calls. Usually, if you're available, you go assist. So I would say how many times I've handled a call on my own. Uh, like 20% of the time, maybe even less, because it's very rare to handle a call on your own. Because we always back each other up because you never know what that leads to. It could be a certain, Vaughn's is calling because there's a homeless guy bothering the customers and they're like, hey man, we gotta get this guy out of here. He's interfering with our business. A lot of times you say, hey man, can you go somewhere else and ask for money? Like they don't really want you here. Okay, but sometimes they get, a lot of the homeless population is like drug induced or mental illness, and you never know how those guys are gonna react. So it goes from a simple, hey man, do you mind leaving to like a full on, this guy is crazy and now the fight's on. And it's like all I did was ask this guy to go somewhere because Vaughns didn't want him here. So that's why we try to back each other up as much as possible. We always try to outnumber the other person. So if there's one of them, we want 2 or 3 of us.
Got it. Got it. And before you joined the academy, you said you went on some drive, or what were those?
Ride-alongs. You can go on
Ride-alongs.
ride-alongs. Our department offers them. Most departments do. If you go on their website, you can sign up. It does take they do a little background check. Like you can't be a felon or anything to go on them, but you are allowed to go on them. Right now, we're not doing them because of COVID, you know. But when I was applying to the department I went to, they highly encouraged us to go on them. So I went on them. You can only do one every 6 months. So the application process takes about a year. From
Wow.
when I applied to when I got in the academy was actually over a year. And during the year, I went on 2 ride-alongs, one, and then 6 months later another one. Um, so yeah,
How were they for you? Never.
they were fun. They're like it's kind of like eye opening, right? To me, the ride-alongs are eye opening. So if you're listening to this and you're wondering what a police officer does, and even if you're like the anti PD, right? Even if you're like the one who wants to defund the police department because of this. Hey, I don't think they're fair. They're doing this or doing that. If you think that way, that's fine. You can think that way, but go on a ride along, see how it is firsthand. And that's really eye opening because what you see on TV on live PD or cops or whatever is not always everything because it's a lot of editing in those shows to show you the good parts to keep you watching it. That's why live PD before they took it off, they followed like 18 departments because they followed this officer and this officer. They kept switching around because they want to show you the action. They want to show you the action, but it's like 99% paperwork and 1% action. So I would say go on a ride along first. See how eye opening is what the everyday police officer does. Because the first ride along I went on to with my department, we drove around and there was like nothing. We were just driving around But then the second one I went on, the officer I was with stopped a guy and he ended up having a gun in his pants.
Wow.
And the fight was on and he asked for you guys and you're sitting there watching it like, oh my God, like it went from like this simple encounter to fighting and this dude's got a strap in his pants, right? So it is eye opening. So whatever side of the spectrum you're on, I would just go. I would suggest going on a ride along, or go to the community academies. I know some departments offer community academies. You go online, you sign up, and you talk to patrol officers, sergeants, all lieutenants. Even sometimes higher than that. And you go and they put you in scenarios that we get put in the academy, and we give it to the civilians, and then we show them videos, and they learn about encounters and what we do. Because when you watch it on the news, you're like, why did that officer do that? Why didn't he do this? Why didn't he do that? Well, anybody could. You look at it from 2020 hindsight and be like, oh yeah, why didn't you do this? It's the same thing when I talk to people, and I'm like, well, before you watch this YouTube video or before you watch this body cam video, you don't know that officer's mindset, right? And what I always like to give the example about is if you're a football fan, everybody remembers the Seahawks and Patriots when Russell Wilson threw that interception on the 1 yard line. And the next day, everybody's like, oh, they should have gave it to Marshawn Lynch on the 1. Why didn't they do that? Why didn't they do that? Well, what people don't know, like me and you might know because we played football, we know how it is for the preparation. You watch film, you do a game plan. Every game plan is different. It's every team. And then you do second half adjustments. So whatever Pete Carroll thought, he said his mindset was this is going to work based on the preparation I've done for the last 2 weeks and my second half adjustments. So it's easy to sit back and say, oh, just give it to Marshawn Lynch on the 1 yard line. He's the beast. Okay, well, you know what? Pete Carroll might have been like, you know what? This won't work because of their interior linemen or their linebackers. Or I know this is going to work because that corner bites on this play every time. If you watch that play, it was supposed to be a pick play, and Malcolm Butler cut it off because the receiver didn't set the pick in time and he ran past it. If he gets that pick, that's a touchdown. The Seahawks win. But it was just a good on the defensive side. So, but Pete Carroll's not thinking that. He's not thinking this guy's going to cut off my pick play and intercept the ball. He's like, oh, this guy's been getting picked all year, So when you watch a YouTube video, oh, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they? Hey, man, you don't know the mindset. You don't know the nature of the call. Look at the call first. What was the call? You look at, oh, this guy's crazy. Oh, they shot a crazy guy. He was mentally ill. Why didn't they help him? The police are shooting crazy people. Well, what was the call? Did they say this guy was crazy? Or did they say, hey, there's a guy out here with a pipe and he's swinging around at people? Okay, well, that's a crime. You can't go around swinging pipes at people. It's assault, a deadly weapon. So the officer might have showed up and saw what he saw and did what he did based on, everything that's happened or everything that he's heard that's happened, right? Because a calling party is a perception. So you might call and say one thing, but that's just your perception of it. So that's another thing we have to keep in mind is that when people call 911, it's not necessarily all true. Because that's just what they see or what they hear. They don't really, unless you're like watching it firsthand, but even then, what if you don't see the big picture? What if you didn't see what happened before that? So to sit back and say the officer was wrong in doing that, well, you don't know because you don't know his training. You don't know the tactics. You don't know what that department taught him in the academy to do. You don't know the call that was based off or what officer talked to somebody. So we always try to do, if there's like any crime, we have one guy go to the crime itself. One person contact a calling party who called. Talk to them. Hey, what did you see? What did you hear? Ask the questions and air that information over the air so that officer dealing with the suspect at the time knows what we have as a crime. What do we have? Do we have felony? Do we have a misdemeanor? Or do we have nothing? What do we have? So that's what we try to do. But sometimes if it's just happening so fast, you don't have that time to react or that time to contact that calling party and see what we have. So you just got to go with what you have in front of you, the facts that are right in front of you. So that's what I would say to the the ones that want to do the ride-alongs and stuff like that. Go firsthand. It's eye-opening, and you'll see how they actually respond and how police officers actually react.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. It's like when you get called into a certain case, you're not we're hearing it from a different perspective, if it's made the news after the matter, after with all the facts already there, but you going into that, you have a completely different perspective, usually from whoever called 911, a victim perspective who's pretty stressed out and probably doesn't know everything that's going on.
Right. That's the other thing. A lot of times you go to calls, and as you're on the call, the dispatcher will tell you, we're trying to get further victims really excited because they're like not calm. They're like, oh, I need the police. I need police. Right, it's happening right now. It's happening right now. Well, what's happening? Where are you? Who are you? Where's this person? Are they still with you, or are they walking down the street? And they can't. The dispatchers, they're great. They're really great, and they do the best they can to get the information and give it to the officer as quick as possible. But sometimes we're going there as quick as possible at the same time. So it's like, what comes first, us getting there, or the information we get? And it's easy to say, well, you should wait for the information. Well, if I wait for the information, that person could be dead. So am I going to wait, or am I going to go? You just got to go and see what you got. And sometimes the biggest calls, you're like, this is going to be crazy, turns into the smallest issue. It's just, you never know how somebody's going to react. Like, people will throw a rock through their window and they'll like call, oh my God, like, because you don't know how that person's reacting. Then we go to shootings, like, oh yeah, man, I was shot in the foot. Yeah, see this right here? And he's like calm about it. So it's just like, you don't really know how anybody's going to react and how they're going to respond to it. So that you got to take it like it's just how it is, how it presents itself. Lady, hey, calm down. Why are you screaming? Well, they threw a rock through my window. Okay, well, where's this person? You just got to take it like that. So it is, it's, it's different every day. It's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, it sounds super different. Like you can get anything any day. So looking into the future, you think that there's going to be a little bit of darkness before the light?
I do. I do think the way it's going right now, from what I've seen, firsthand experience, it's not going favorably for the law abiding citizens. It's not. Um, that it will change. I don't think it's going to change in the next year or two. I think it's going to take a few more years. Um, and it's basically going to come down to what they're going to do with this social injustice defunding movement. Are they going to proceed and keep going forward with it? Because I don't really think, I see a lot of people post, on social media and stuff about them supporting, the social injustice and defunding, but I don't really think they really know what that means. And what I mean by that is, I've had people hit me up on Instagram and, what do you think about this and what do you think about that, and we get into a little thing back and forth. But just hearing their perspective, just one person tried to tell me, well, I think it's stupid that officers can shoot somebody when they feel threatened. I go, show me in any policy or law where it states an officer can shoot somebody if they feel threatened or if they're scared. Show me. Show me where that is. And they can't, because that's not what it says. You can't just shoot somebody because you're afraid. It doesn't work that way. So when people are telling me this, I'm like, you're basing your opinion off something that's not real. So when it comes to the, oh, I'm supporting the defunding or social injustice, what are you supporting? Are you protesting back cops when you're out there with your sign? Are you protesting the police officers themselves? Are you protesting the sentencing laws, three strikes laws? Are you protesting the criminal justice system as a whole? Like, what are you protesting? So I think that's what it comes down to. I think the people that are supporting the defund the police and social injustice movement really need to think about what exactly they're supporting and what they're not supporting, what they're protesting. It's not as easy as, oh, I'm just protesting the cops. What does that mean? What does protesting the cops mean? Are you protesting the way we work, the way we look, the way we dress, the way we act? Like, what does that mean? You're protesting the cops. Oh, I hate the police. Well, why? Why do you hate the police? How many encounters have you had with the police? Oh, I hate them for what they do on the TV. Oh, so you're basing off media. Okay, so you're going to listen to the media. That's what you're basing your realization on. You're going to protest because of what you saw on CBS News or Fox News or MSNBC. That's what you're basing your opinion off of. So it's like you're not even making your own opinion. You're having someone else tell you how to feel. So I think people should really think about what they're honestly protesting. And I personally, I don't think policing should be political. Why is it political? It's either you committed a crime or you didn't. Why is there politics involved? It's either you did this or you didn't do this. In order to figure out if you did this or not, we have to do an investigation. So, yeah, you may be detained for a certain amount of time and it could be inconvenient for you. And you could be innocent. You're going to be mad as all you want. But what if we just let you go and that victim's like, you just let that dude go. This is what he did. So you can't just let everyone go just because they're like, oh, man, I didn't do nothing. I didn't do nothing. That's what everybody says. I've never stopped somebody and they're like, I did it. It was me. No. Everyone says, I didn't do nothing. So you got to detain them for that amount of time it takes you or your partners to do an investigation. So, yeah, it's inconvenient, but hey, you know what? It is what it is. So that's what I think on that.
Yeah, it's really complicated, and I feel like most people, maybe not, but a lot of people that do protest the police maybe themselves don't necessarily have the worst interactions with the police. They've actually probably had maybe pleasant interactions with the police. I know I have. And it was an onslaught this year. There was a lot of people saying, feeling very strongly about defunding policing. And that's an interesting perspective that you said, it shouldn't be political. It's a law. And it's just, it should be more black and white than it is. But it hasn't turned that way this year.
No, it hasn't. Like you said, there's been a lot of strong people opposing the police, and I was there during the riots in my city, and I also went to other cities to help them out when they called for mutual aid. So I was there on the front lines. I was standing on the skirmish line, getting yelled at, thrown stuff at. Yeah, I was there. I wasn't at home watching it on TV like everybody else was, or I wasn't in the back like watching from a view. I was standing in the front, right there in front of everyone. So, and in my mind, I'm thinking, all these people have had negative encounters with the police. There's just no way. There's just no way. And if they did have a negative encounter, was it them that drove them to it? Was it their attitude or the way they acted? Because when you get a ticket for speeding, you're not happy, right? No one's happy to get a ticket. And what do they? Oh man, that cop, man, he such a dick, and blah 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 blah. Well, who was speeding? You were speeding. And what you don't know is, what if we get grants from the city? And let me put this in perspective for a second. We have this stretch on our road that doesn't have street lights. It's just from one end to the other. So there's one street light at the top, one street light at the end. So people are constantly going fast down this area. Well, we've had a few fatal car accidents. We had one guy hop the center median, lost control, hit a tree, and died. We've had cars crash into each other and die. So because of that, we've had a grant where they took our traffic enforcement, basically motorcycle cops, to enforce the traffic laws there. So that street, that stretch has been getting hit hard with speeding and reckless driving. Now, as the person driving, this person getting the ticket, you don't know that. You just driving to work or driving home or driving to the grocery store, you get pulled over for going 60 and a 40 and you're upset. You're like, man, there's nobody here on this street. There's nobody. Well, what you don't know is the reason we're doing that is because we've had a lot of people die. So, and what is the biggest deterrent? Getting a ticket? Because how many tickets? I don't know if you've gotten a ticket, but I've gotten 2 speeding tickets. Because when I get a speeding ticket, you're like, oh man, I'm not going to speed. But does that really deter you? Is that really the deterrent, getting the ticket? No. What do you do when you're driving on the street or the freeway and you see the cop pull somebody over? You slow
Slow
down.
down.
You slow down and you drive like you're supposed to for that stretch, right? So when that cop is pulling that person over, yeah, unfortunate for that person, they have to pay the fine. But what it does is it sends a message to everybody else to say, hey, the police are out. We should slow down. So that's the real deterrent, is seeing other people pulled over. And when I drive to my parents' house, there's a stretch where there's no lights, and there's always a cop, motorcycle cop, usually at this one area. Sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. But me knowing that, when I'm driving and I come to that hill, I slow down because I've seen him there many times before. So that also gets in your head, like, hey, they're here. So when we go to that stretch of that street where we're hammering right now, it's because later on, a month, 2 months, 3 months from now, even years from now, I still drive to my parents' house and know, hey, there's gonna be a cop there. And so it's like, when that person goes to that stretch of street, they know to slow down and drive to reduce the amount of people dying in car accidents. So yeah, it sucks when you get that ticket, but a lot of times it's not just, oh, I'm doing this because I want to be a dick today. I don't wake up in the morning, whose day can I ruin today? No. Usually there's factors that come into that. We don't just pull people over just to do it. We're getting told, hey, there's been this going on in this area. There's been this going on in this area. I'm not traffic. I'm in a patrol car. I'm not on a motorcycle. So I don't deal with that sort of it, but I deal with, like, hey, you know what? There's been high vehicle thefts in this area. So then we've been in that area a lot. We've been stopping people a lot, and or sometimes they put out a black Charger was involved in this incident. Well, I'm gonna go around stopping black Chargers. If it's whether or not you're involved or you're not, if I know, hey, this Charger just shot this person, and I see a black Charger fitting the description, okay, you know what? Let's see who this person is. Let's identify them. Maybe they're involved, maybe they're not. So when you get pulled over, you're like, oh man, this cop's just being a dick. No, we have motives. It's not just because we want to do it to do it. It's a higher power that plays into it. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, there is. I mean, even if you do get a speeding ticket, I have gotten speeding tickets. It's like, maybe that's a good reminder you shouldn't speed, and not to, like, yeah, I wasn't that pissed about it, but I know some people, can get pretty angry when they get speeding tickets, but it's like, it's necessary. I mean, if we have highways with no cops on them and people are just recklessly driving without any repercussions, that's going to be the reason that we do want speeding tickets.
Right. So that's the thing is when you get pulled over and you get that ticket, you could be upset, but you don't know how that family's feeling, that person was speeding and they hit them and now that person's dead. I was on a deal a year ago where a kid ran a red light and he T-boned this lady coming home and killed her, but he didn't die.
Wow.
And that stretch of street there, we've had a lot of fatal car accidents there, unfortunately. And the family showed up at the scene because they were finding my iPhone app on the mom, and they were like, yeah, said she was going to the store. She hasn't come home yet, so we just located her phone and it showed up here. And here we are with this whole street blocked off, and we're like, oh, yeah. So when it comes to those tickets that you're getting, they're for a reason. They're for a reason. It's prevent stuff like that. And is giving 100 tickets a day going to prevent that? No, it's not. But can it slow it down? Yes, it can.
Yes, it definitely can slow it down. And just like the example you said earlier, what's the first thing you do when you see someone on the side of the road pulled over with a cop? You slow down. So it does work.
Yeah, so that's That's why we stopping people. You know, like if you stop somebody in an alley, nobody's gonna see it. But if you stop somebody in a major intersection, people are gonna see it. We've had a few car accidents at this one intersection that's like right in the middle of where I'm working. So lately, I know myself and a few others, we've been stopping people just in that area. And you know, I haven't given a ticket in a while. I stop somebody and you know, hey, you know, this is why I'm pulling you over or whatever. I'll make sure to see if they have a valid driver's license. If they have a valid driver's license, you know, I'll let them go because, like I said, when they see me pulling somebody over, that's more effective than the person I'm stopping. So that's basically what I do.
Got it. What was your experience like on the front lines this year?
Um, it was uh very memorable, very memorable. There's not the only time I can remember, or even I can't even say remember, but like the riots in '92 was like I think the last time there was actually like protests and riots like there have been when the George Floyd incident happened, and so to be a part of that is like wow, there could be something like that could not happen like this in the next 30 years. So it was very memorable. And it was tiring. You know, I think that week I worked like 14 days straight, 12-hour shifts, 16-hour shifts, 10-hour shifts, you know, 13-hour shifts, just for like 2 weeks straight. You know, it was tiring and it was hard. You know, but it was memorable. Definitely something you're gonna remember your entire career. It's definitely something they're going to teach in the academy. We've actually changed our tactics because of that when it comes to crowd control, because of what happened when we trying to protect our portion of the city and it didn't work or didn't go according to plan. And because of that, we've actually changed our entire way we do crowd control now. So they're going to teach it in the academy, and just to be a part of that is, you know, it's definitely memorable.
That sounds very memorable.
Yeah.
What what do you mean by your portion of the city?
Um, because where I was, it was only because the city it's bigger than how many cops are. So when I said the portion of the city, I mean where I was at on the day we had our riots. That's what I mean. I wasn't around the entire driving around the entire city. I was stationed here where there was like 1,000 people throwing water bottles and you know all kinds of things. And I know people are like, "Oh, water bottles, how can those hurt?" Well, they freeze them. They freeze a water ball and they throw it at you. So it's not just the plastic. I just bought this from 7-Eleven. No, this is like a full on shooting fireworks at us. And so that's where I was at. It was yeah, it was different.
It sounds different. Did you ever feel, like it was particularly unsafe?
Um what do you mean by unsafe? Like was I unsafe? Were
Yes.
No, I didn't feel unsafe because I was with a lot of officers and I knew like what our plan was. You know, I knew what we had. It wouldn't get to the point where somebody would die. But you never know. There could be somebody in the back with a long rifle just picking us off one by one. They could have done that. But I'm thinking in my head, okay, these people aren't going to a protest to shoot us. You know, they're going to a protest because they're mad at whatever it is they're mad at. They're mad at police officers. They're mad at the government. They're mad at Donald Trump. They're mad at whatever they're mad at. They're going to protest that. They're not there to shoot us and kill us. So I wasn't feeling unsafe, but there was more of them than there was of us. But I still didn't feel like unsafe because I knew if this got crazy, this is what we would do. You know, tear gas and rubber bullets. So I know that would help. When rubber bullets start flying and tear gas starts going off, people tend to scatter. You know, but then you look at Portland, that went on for like 100 something days. And they had like umbrellas and boards, and they were doing, you know, blocking the rubber bullets that were being shot by the police at them. And for me, I was watching that like, for what reason? Like, what I mean, for what reason? I mean, you're the person with the umbrella. Why? At that point, you're not even protesting. You don't even have a sign anymore. You're just being a problem to be a problem. Like, what is the point of getting you and all your buddies with umbrellas and boards just so, okay, we're going to do this and stay on this corner and the police won't be able to take us to jail? Oh, that will show them. How, like, what are you trying to accomplish? So, but no, I didn't feel unsafe.
Right. And how much do you know about Portland? I actually don't know very much about it at all.
I only know as much as what the news articles put out. I did talk to a few officers that knew guys in Portland, but I wasn't there firsthand. I don't know firsthand. I do know that they were throwing fireworks at the cops, and some cops had like missing parts of their calf and
Wow.
Yeah, it got bad. But as far as that, I knew it was a small portion of Portland too. You know, it wasn't like the whole city. It was just like this one downtown area where it's happening at. But I don't really know in detail of, why they were doing it in the first place. I mean, I get the first part with the, no justice, no peace, or whatever they had, right? But then after that, it just got out of hand. It didn't turn into a protest anymore. It turned into a riot.
100 plus days is a very long time.
Yeah.
And how are the police forces around the nation or compared to your force? Is there any differences in the way things are moving forward, or is it all pretty steady across the country?
Like, do you mean like support from the community, or like what do you mean by
Support from the community, lower billets, so less people on patrol at a single time.
So I do know that there are certain cities getting hit with more of the defunding than others. Like I said, we lost 50 plus officers opposed to LAPD proposing 950. So that's a lot. And so it's like, okay, is it the same? No, but it kind of is, right? Because every department, like big department, is getting hit with some sort of defunding, whether it's one officer or 1,000 officers. They're throughout the nation. All big departments are getting hit with some sort of part of it. And as support from the community, that's hard to say because I don't know if one state, in like, North Dakota, if they're pro police than others. I can't speak on that. Um, I would assume that it's different everywhere. That it's not steady blanket across the board. Different. It's going to be different in one area, one state, one city, one county than another. So
Yeah, it's pretty crazy though how those riots were united in some sense, even though they were separate. They
yeah,
all happen across the country like at the same time.
although protests, yeah, I did.
Protests
And
are
I
the
know New
word.
York was getting hit with them, and I think I just saw a thing where there's some more protests going on in New York today still regarding a separate incident that just occurred. They just had an officer involved shooting. I didn't really I saw like a snippet of it. It was, some guy on like a height on stairs. He was like up high somewhere. It looked like a church or something, and he was up there with a gun, telling the officer, shoot me, whatever. And then they shot him. But I don't know the details on that. And I know that sparked a little protest. I wouldn't say huge across the city, but in that area, it did.
Wow. It's
That seems to be the new MO. Is that every time there's some sort of police action that goes viral, that area is going to have a protest.
Has that deterred or have cops retired? Because I mean, I know at the beginning you said that cops were retiring, but is that at all due to, kind of this?
I would say yes. Not all of them, but there are some officers that I do know personally that are leaving because of the way it's going. They see the future in policing and they're like, this is not good. I don't want to be in this profession anymore. I have this many years on. I'm this years of age. I can retire. And I know some that have taken early retirement instead of going the full 30 years. They do like 27 or 25 or whatever because they don't want to do the next 5 years, the next 3 years because of the way policing is going. They want to get out of it and just be done with it. So it has affected this, social movement has affected police officers in the way they're retiring. Yes.
Wow. That's I mean, hopefully we can still get high quality men and women into the academy and onto the
Well,
force.
the thing about that is too is with COVID, all cities are doing. I know for my city, we're not doing that great in revenue, so we're not putting through a lot of academies because that costs money. So it's you're losing you're losing X amount of officers, but you can't fill the spots due to the fact that you don't have money for the academy. So it's for the next, and who knows how long it's going to take for the cities and state to recover from it. I'm not a professional economist person. I've talked to some of my friends and some of the guys we went to school with that are in that area, and they've said it's going to take 3 to 4 years, even 5 years, for states and the country to recover from it. So it's like, man, you imagine if they don't put an academy for 5 years, and every year you're going to have officers retire, and then you're going to have nobody going in, and that's not just for my state. That's going to be nationwide. If the COVID's affecting everyone throughout the country, not just one area, not just one state or one city. So, and it's not just policing too. What about fire department? I think our fire guy, I think they cut like only 2, if I remember correctly, when they put the city budget out. But then city workers got furloughed. If you're a civilian worker, you got furloughed like 19 days, I think it was. So now they're not getting paid 19 days of the year. And, so not just policing, but just citywide, like city employees, like public works. If the street light goes out or if the telephone pole gets knocked over, we call public works to come and fix it. Well, if they're getting furloughed and they're taking days off, maybe that won't get fixed, and that's unsafe because now there's electrical wires that are showing, or this pole is knocked over causing a hazard in the street. And those poles are heavy, you can't just pick those up and move it. So citywide, nationwide, it's affecting everybody on all aspects, not just policing. But yeah, it's gonna take a while for it to recover. And like you said, hopefully we do get more people, more qualified men and women in these jobs. But if you look what happened during the 90s and Rampart, right? The Rampart scandal of like what the movie Training Day was based off of, and the
What's
dirty cops.
Rampart?
Rampart scandal, where in LA they had the division Rampart, and they had all the dirty cops in there that were gang members. They were planting guns on people and planting drugs on people. You seen the movie Training Day with Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke?
Yes, I've seen that.
That movie's based on Rampart.
Got it.
Washington being a dirty cop. So, and the reason I bring that up is because those guys got in there because they lowered their standard. They weren't getting enough officers, so they lowered their standard, and now they're letting these guys in that turned out to be active gang members, and now they're police officers. And so when I look at today's policing, and we say qualified men and women, I just really hope nationwide, we keep the standard, because once you lower it, you're going to have another Rampart scandal where you're going to let people in where they're going to have convictions on their record or bad credit, right? Bad credit's a huge thing because now you're susceptible to take money. If you see, money somewhere or
Wow.
a bribe, right? You go to we get dead persons calls a lot. And for us, we write a report, even if it's like a natural death, like someone just dies of natural causes of age. We still take a report just because. Not a lot of cities do it, not a lot of departments do it because it's more of a medical thing, but we still do. But it only takes one officer to write that report because it's just you're sitting there, you're waiting for the coroner, you're waiting for the mortuary, whatever it is, right? So what if you got, you're letting people in, they got bad credit, they're going to this dead person's house and they see, some jewelry or whatever. Oh, they're dead. They don't need it anymore, right? Now you're going to be taking things and, we just don't need that in the profession. We don't. And so hopefully they keep the standard where it's at and we do get more qualified men and women and hopefully they open up the academies and stuff like that. But it's going to take a few years for that to happen. And at the same time, with less cops and higher crime rate, it's going to be, those cops, we're going to be burnt out. It's going to happen like in 08. I can talk to the senior guys, the senior officers that were here in 08. They'll tell you, man, it was crazy. Like you were just constantly going to call, taking reports, and they were getting burnt out. And that lasted 5 years, 6 years, I think, until my department finally recovered. Took 6 years. So they were just for 6 years straight, just working. So
It's because were they understaffed because of the depression?
yeah, understaffed because of the depression, and they cut a lot of things too. They cut certain like juvenile booking. I remember we had a juvenile booking, like a full juvenile detention center. Now we don't. We don't even. So now we just take them to. Well, it used to be Los Polendrinos, but now it's somewhere else in the central LA somewhere. So I mean, they just and that takes time out of your day too. It's like a 4-hour deal when you arrest a juvie. So
Because you have
it's
to drive them over to the other
well,
facility.
juvies are different too because you actually have to wait. You have to write the report before you take them, and then you have to wait for the DOJ hit to come back on them. And depending on the time of day when you send that fax into the DOJ, I've waited in the jail with the juvenile for 3 hours before the DOJ sends something back. And then on top of that, you got to drive them and then come back. So you're taking like 2 officers out of the field on top of how short staffed we are now with the call volume now. So instead of having X amount of officers, you have 2 less than that. So yeah, it hurt in 08 a lot because of that. And it's who knows what they're going to cut next.
Wow, it's going to be an interesting next 3 to 5 years.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it goes with all city employees, So
Daniel, this has been great. Is there anything you'd like everyone to keep in mind?
I would just say I hope everybody would just keep like an open mind when it comes to policing. And what I mean by that is I don't mean like, oh, every cop is great, you should love them, because it's not true. There's bad cops, there's bad teachers, there's bad doctors, right? There's about 85,000 malpractice lawsuits a year. Okay, that you can look that up. 85,000 malpractice lawsuits a year. So there's bad everywhere, even when you go in for surgery. So when I say keep them open mind, and you look at the news and they're like, they shot this guy, look what he was doing. Look it up and do your own research. You look it up, look to the call they were going to, maybe even try to pull the report. It's all public information. You might have to put in a request for that certain. That could be, if you don't want to do that, then don't do that. But at least look up some information so you have background information on it. Don't just draw a conclusion because the news is making you draw a conclusion, whether it's CNN, Fox, MSNBC, one of those left wing, right wing news groups are always going to talk one way about policing than the other. So I would just say do your own research, and it's not all bad. It's not. 99% of us are good, and I know that's what everybody says. Like, oh, we don't want to hear that. We just want this to stop. Well, you know what? Maybe it's going to, if there's not racist anymore. What I mean, like police officers saying, "Oh, the police officers are racist." Not today, not in 2020. 1960s, sure. 2020, no. So don't be like, hey, all these cops are racist, or they did this because they're racist, or they're biased. No, it's not true. So just do your own research, keep an open mind, and don't believe everything you hear on TV.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank
This
you.
was a lot of fun.
All right.
Peace.
Later.